The courtroom is quiet, papers are shuffled, eyes nervously dart, and then, Christine shoves ahead a pile of papers, her voice shaking but crisp, slicing the thick air. This is not my signature. This is a falsehood, and I will demonstrate it. In one instant, the whole family name is shattered. Secrets that had lain undisturbed for years start to emerge. Betrayal, deceit, and heartache, all exposed in the harsh glow of justice. What had started as rumors in the dark now explodes into an avalanche of lawsuits that can dismantle everything the Browns had established together. Do you think that the truth will be revealed? Or are the lies going to bury it forever? Before we go on, be sure you're in TLC Future by subscribing and joining the conversation in the comments, because this is a story you won't want to watch from the sidelines. Christine exits the courthouse that day with a racing heart. The throng of reporters yells out questions. Camera strobes in her face, but she doesn't respond. Not yet. Her thoughts are elsewhere, back to that moment she realized her world was falling apart in ways she couldn't comprehend. It had started quietly, all but imperceptibly. A call from the bank. A strange note in the clerk's voice. "Mrs. Brown, your application has been rejected." Perplexed, Christine wanted to know why. The next words ring in her mind. "Your credit report indicates numerous outstanding accounts and suspicious loan transactions." Christine's stomach plunged. She had always been prudent, never irresponsible with finances. Something was amiss. Very amiss. Late that evening, she sat at the kitchen table with stacks of bills and letters around her, her fingers shaking as she opened each one. The figures made no sense. Credit cards she had never opened, loans she had never applied for, all attributed to her name, her social security number, her alleged signature. Her chest constricted as the truth sank in. This was no error. It was intentional. Someone near her had framed her. Janelle was the first one she called. Her voice broke over the phone. "Urgent. I don't know what to do. My name is ruined." Janelle, calm as ever, instructed her to come over. Christine and the other woman sat together that evening, the light of the lamp casting long shadows over the table as Christine laid the evidence out before them. Janelle paged through the papers slowly, her brow creasing more deeply with each page. "These signatures, they don't feel right," she breathed. Christine nodded, her parched throat catching. She had considered the same, but voicing it made it horribly real. When the ones nearest to you all of a sudden seem like strangers, the world seems a lot darker. Christine's first attorney was guardedly. Forgery cases were complicated, he explained, costly, difficult to prosecute. But Christine's eyes blazed with a combination of fear and outrage. This wasn't about money, this was about her self-respect, her own life, her children's future. This person who had done this hadn't stolen her identity, they'd stolen her peace. She wouldn't let it go unexplained. Weeks passed as Christine gathered what little she could. Credit reports, bank statements, even the denied loan applications. Each piece told the same story, a web of deceit tightening around her. The tension inside her home grew unbearable. Kody avoided her questions, brushing off her fears with dismissive words. "You're overreacting," he told her more than once, his arms folded as if shielding himself from blame. But Christine noticed the way his eyes shifted, the tension in his stance. He was aware of something, and only increased her determination. One afternoon, unable to silence the gnawing suspicion any longer, Christine took the stack of documents to a forensic specialist. The expert was calm, clinical, adjusting his glasses as he studied the pages. "I'll compare the handwriting, the strokes, the pressure, we'll know soon enough." The wait was excruciating. Every tick of the clock reminded Christine of the life on pause. Her credit frozen, her reputation stained, her trust shattered. At last, the call arrived. The voice of the expert was heavy with conviction. "These signatures do not match your handwriting. They're forged." Christine slumped in her chair, holding the phone against her ear. She couldn't catch her breath for an instant. The confirmation was relief and heartbreak. She hadn't imagined it. She wasn't going crazy. Someone she had once trusted had done something criminal to her, and now there was evidence. At times, The truth will not set you free. It will bring you into a war you never wished to engage. Equipped with the expert's report, Christine stormed back to her attorney. The tone of their discussions had changed. While there had been reticence before, now there was passion. Legal action was no longer simply an option. It was a certainty. The case would be constructed bit by bit, page by page, until the complete picture was revealed in court. But with every step forward came new questions. Who exactly had signed her name? Why? And how deep did the betrayal run? Late at night, Christine replayed every interaction in her mind. Robyn's sympathetic smiles suddenly felt hollow. Kody's evasions grew heavier in her memory. Even Mary's quiet detachment seemed suspicious now. Trust was crumbling, replaced by paranoia. The initial filing was quiet, with no fanfare. A court petition detailing Christine's forgery and fraud claims. The start of a process that would pull the family into the unforgiving glare of the legal system. Whispers became rumors. Rumors became headlines. Friends phoned, relatives inquired. Rumors abounded in the community. But Christine remained tight-lipped, her singular focus on the battle to come. She recognized what was next. The denials, the excuses, the tears, and the lies. But she also recognized that she wasn't going it alone. Chanel stood with her, unrelenting and unbreakable. They won't get away with this, she vowed. And Christine held onto that vow like a life raft. As the day of the first hearing approached, the tension came to a boil. Behind closed doors in Christine's house, the air was charged with unspoken words. Kody strode the hallways, phone in hand, his voice lowered to a whisper. Robyn's laughter, which once was such a gentle sound, now grated on the nerves like fingernails on glass. And Christine, once the center of the family, found herself an outsider in her own life. When the battle for truth starts, it doesn't only reveal falsehoods, it reveals who individuals truly are. And so, with shaking hands but an unbreakable spirit, Christine returned to the courthouse. This was no longer a matter of ink on paper. It was now a matter of betrayal, justice, and survival. The drama had been set, and nothing would be the same again. The courthouse was barely scented with fresh wood and old coffee, the sort of smell that seemed to stick to spaces where lies and truth often bumped against each other every day. Christine was seated at the plaintiff's table, her hands together so tightly they were white. Her attorney spoke strategy in her ear, but Christine's eyes were locked across the room. Robyn sat there, as neat as ever, face set with innocence, eyes shining as if tears might leap up at any moment. Christine shivered. This was the same woman who had once referred to her as sister, who had laughed with her children, eaten meals from the same table, and now she was the face. Christine connected with betrayal. The judge walked in, and the room stood. The sound of shuffling feet reverberated like thunder in Christine's chest. She attempted to control her breathing, to seem calm, but her heart pounded wildly. This was the start, the point at which whispers would be converted to speech, where manufactured ink would become biting accusations. Her attorney began with a remark that caused the gallery to lean forward. And B's case is about deception, about trust, betrayed at the deepest level. The evidence will make it clear that my client's identity was stolen, her credit ruined, her future threatened, all through fraudulent documents. And the perpetrator is not a stranger. It's someone sitting in this very room. Gasps of shock spread through the crowd. Christine could sense eyes upon her, mingled with pity and interest. She did not flinch, refusing to meet her gaze downward. Robyn, on the other side of the room, wiped away tears with a tissue, her lips trembling as if she had already been typed as the victim in her own play. There are two wars in every courtroom, the war waged with facts, and the war waged with feelings. Robyn's lawyer stood up swiftly, his voice suave and authoritative. He created a completely different image. What we are dealing with here, Your Honor, is a misunderstanding. Finances in multi-child families can get convoluted. Accidents occur. My client is a loving mother, a dedicated wife, a woman who has no motive to hurt Christine. We will demonstrate that these charges are not only false but based on bitterness and resentment. Christine's jaw clenched. Resentment, with her hurt, her damaged credit, her sleepless nights. Jealousy, she struggled to raise her voice, to make the room realize the truth she lugged around in her chest like a rock. The initial pieces of evidence were presented. Photocopies of loan applications signed and named Christine. Christine's head jerked forward, her breath hitching. There it was. The crooked forgery that was supposed to be her. The letters slanted in the wrong direction. The spaces too irregularly spaced. She knew her own writing. Every curve and slope. This wasn't hers. Her attorney took the court through the documents, page by page, pointing out inconsistencies. And then there was the moment Christine had feared and hoped for. The testimony of the forensic handwriting expert. The expert, a man with silver hair and steady hands, took the stand. He spoke with calm authority, breaking down the analysis in terms everyone could understand. The writing shows hesitation, unnatural pen lifts, and inconsistent pressure, all hallmarks of forgery. When compared to Mrs. Brown's genuine samples, it is clear these signatures were fabricated. A hush filled the courtroom. Christine's pulse accelerated, relief breaking in waves over her. She wasn't paranoid. She wasn't delusional. Here was evidence, scientific and irrefutable. Robyn's lawyer sprang to his feet. Objection? That's one man's opinion. The judge's gavel came down hard. Overruled. Proceed. Christine observed Robyn intently. For the first time the mask slipped. Her lips clamped down, her shoulders tense. The slightest flicker of fear passed over her eyes, before she hastily dropped her gaze to the table. Sometimes the truth doesn't scream. It whispers, and you have to observe keenly to hear it. The hearing plodded well into the afternoon, each statement thick with tension. Christine endured every objection, every counter-argument, every try at muddying the waters. Robyn's defense presented her as a saint, a woman who could not do wrong, a wronged woman accused. But every time the gravity of the evidence brought the account back around to Christine's hands. During a recess, Christine stepped into the hallway, her body trembling as though she'd run a marathon. Janelle was waiting there, arms folded, her eyes blazing with loyalty. "You're doing incredible," she said firmly. "Don't let them shake you. Everyone can see what's happening." Christine nodded, though tears blurred her vision. "It's just seeing her sit there, acting like she's the victim. It makes me sick." Janelle put a firm hand on her shoulder. "The truth has a way of cutting through lies. Stay strong." The break had passed, and Christine had resumed her seat. The room's tension thickened with every passing hour. Robyn did not dare meet Christine's eyes, instead tight-fisted, holding a rosary, praying silently loudly enough for the gallery to hear. It was drama. Christine seethed. Everything Robyn did was calculated to win hearts, to present her as vulnerable and victimized. But Christine possessed something more potent than theatrics. She possessed the truth, and she was not afraid any longer to use it. When the judge took his adjournment for the day, tension crackled through the air. The crowd murmured as they filed out, heads shaking, others whispering that perhaps, Robyn wasn't as innocent as she had everyone believing. Christine rose to her feet, collecting her belongings, her body laden with fatigue, but her spirit unshaken. She looked back at Robyn once more before exiting the courtroom. For a fleeting instant, their eyes locked. Christine anticipated defiance, perhaps anger. What she saw instead was fear. When fear appears in the eyes of someone who insisted they were innocent, you know the true story is just getting underway. The following morning, the courthouse hummed with excitement. News had spread quickly. Today, Christine would testify. Reporters swarmed outside, their voices a cacophony, as Christine elbowed through, Janelle right behind her. Inside, the air was charged, like the walls were tensioning themselves for impact. Christine sat down in the witness stand, her hands sweaty, her throat parched. The oath weighed heavily as she extended her hand, promising to tell the truth. The judge nodded, and her attorney advanced, voice soft at first. "Christine, please tell us about the moment you knew something was amiss." Her chest swelled and deflated, with a nervous breath. She looked at the jury, at these strangers who now possessed her destiny. And then she started. Late one night, I opened a letter I did not expect, an application for a loan signed in my name. But I never signed it, never requested it. When I read that, and the bills afterwards, I knew someone had stolen my identity. Someone close to me. Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. The courtroom leaned in, each word dripping with tension. Christine reached for a tissue, her eyes wet, but she didn't crumble. Not here. Not now. She had carried this pain too long to falter at the edge of justice. Robyn fidgeted in her seat, head down, wiping her eyes as if the testimony hurt her too. To onlookers, it might have seemed like sympathy. But to Christine, it was mockery, an acting out for public consumption and not actuality. When tears are deployed as a weapon, the distinction between victim and villain tapers precariously. Christine's attorney led her through the particulars, her devastated credit, the humiliation of being rejected for mundane applications, the threat of losing her house. Each phrase was a sword aimed at the defense. Christine's tone grew impassioned when she discussed her children, how she feared what sort of life this financial devastation would provide for them. Then was the one she had feared. Christine, do you think you know who did this? The room fell silent. Christine gulped. Her eyes traveled to Robyn, who was only a few feet away. For an instant, their eyes met. Christine's voice shook, but she didn't crack. Yes. I think it was Robyn. Gasp filtered through the gallery. Robyn's lawyer sprang to his feet. Objection? Speculation? Persistent? Said the judge harshly. But the harm was done. The seed was sown. The jury had heard it, and the words lingered in the air like smoke that could not be dispelled. Robyn's attorney wasted no time. He strode toward the stand, his expression sharp, ready to dismantle Christine piece by piece. His questions cut like knives. Mrs. Brown, isn't it true that you've had disagreements with my client for years? That you've resented her relationship with your husband? Christine stiffened. We've had disagreements, yes. But this is not about jealousy. This is about forgery. About fraud. The lawyer smiled, pacing slowly. You deny feeling bitter, then? Christine's fists tightened in her lap. I'm angry because my life has been ruined. Not out of jealousy, but out of betrayal. The argument escalated, Christine's voice rising even as she struggled to remain calm. The jury observed intently, their heads nodding, some others furrowed. The judge finally had to step in, gavel cracking down. Enough. Stay on point, counselor. Christine's attorney took the floor back, steadying her. He leaned in, his voice gentle once more. Christine, why are you fighting this case? Her response cut like a finely honed fire-hardened blade. Because the truth is important. Because I want my name back. Because my children have a right to know their mother. Stood up for what's right. Tears glistened in her eyes, and even the most hardened jurors appeared touched for the first time. Robyn, though, was coming apart. Her face reddened, her lips shaking. When it came time for her to answer, she stood up abruptly, her chair scraping. This is all lies, she shouted, her voice high and cracking. I would never do this to her, never. She's making me the villain because she hates me. The judge's gavel came down once more. Order. But the tantrum had already rocked the room. Whispers cascaded through the gallery. Robyn sank into her chair, weeping into her hands, her lawyer working to quiet her. Christine watched her, not with contempt, but with something icier shock, at how far the performance would travel. Sometimes the disguise slips, and what is seen is much stronger than any evidence. The hearing adjourned after the judge ordered a recess, but tension hung in the air, charged and tense. Outside, the press surrounded, yelling questions regarding Christine's allegations and Robyn's collapse. Christine held her head above her shoulders, not deigning to respond. She had spoken as required inside those walls, on oath. The rest would be enacted in the testimony. As she stepped down the courthouse steps, Janelle beside her, Christine felt this odd combination of fatigue and resilience. Her truth was now out there, raw and irrevocable, but she knew this was only the start. Robyn would not go quietly, and Kody, Kody's silence throughout all of it was more telling than any testimony ever could have been. He hadn't defended her. He hadn't stood up for Robyn. He'd simply sat there, looking away from everyone. And that silence, Christine was afraid, was concealing more than she could presently perceive. The courtroom was colder that day, as if even the walls were stiffening in anticipation of what was to come. Christine sat rigidly, the hum of nerves tingling her limbs, while Robyn squirmed restlessly in her seat. The judge didn't delay in calling the next witness, a computer forensics specialist, whose testimony would either disentangle the defense or rattle Christine's case to its core. The man pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose and spoke firmly. We did a complete analysis of the subject loan applications, following IP addresses, timestamps, and electronic imprints. He raised a fat binder, pages filled with marked data. The data indicates the documents were filed online. The place of origin was not Christine's home. It originated in a different household altogether. Christine's stomach clenched. She leaned forward. Anticipation. The witness turned a page. The original IP address is the same as Mrs. Robyn Brown's residence. Several applications were made from the same device in a matter of weeks, each for Christine Brown's own data. Whispers exploded in the courtroom like waves against the pressure. Robyn's lawyer sprang to his feet, spluttering. This is circumstantial. Anybody could have used that device. The expert's eyes narrowed. Doubtful. The applications were submitted at times when records indicate Mrs. Brown was home. Again, the account used to access the lender's website was attached to her personal email. Robyn's face went white. Her hand shook as she gripped the tissue harder, holding it to her lips as if it could contain her secrets within. Technology doesn't lie. It recalls all, even the things we pray it will forget. Christine sat suspended, her feelings a tempest. Relief rolled through, but so did a peculiar, gnawing sadness. This was the confirmation she needed, but laid out so bluntly. Her name, her life, her trust, all connected with Robyn's deception. It felt like a knife turning deeper. The defense flailed, introducing objections, calling for explanations, but the judge overruled. The damning fragments piled on, one by one: login histories, device fingerprints, even subtle metadata, indicating files modified using Robyn's account prior to submission. Christine's attorney addressed the jury, his voice calm and deep. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not coincidence. This is not mistake. This is intentional fraud, executed with precision from within a home that was meant to be one of trust. Robyn snapped. Tears streamed down her face, her shoulders convulsing. It wasn't me, she screamed, her voice ringing in the quiet courtroom. I don't know how this happened. I swear. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, trying to calm her, but she brushed him off, hysteria breaking in her voice. I've been set up. Someone is framing me. The eruption brought uncomfortable stares. Even her sympathizers now observed a woman breaking apart, her tail slipping between shaking hands. Christine's heart thrashed. A part of her wanted to stand up, to shout back, to insist on the truth. But she remained motionless, her silence more eloquent than any utterance. The evidence testified on her behalf. The judge told Robyn to calm down. Slowly, unsteadily, she slumped back in her chair, covering behind shaking hands. Christine saw a glimpse of Kody next to her, his face white, jaw set, eyes set firmly on the ground. He hadn't even looked at Christine. He hadn't looked at Robyn either. His silence was his own admission, though to what? Christine wasn't sure yet. Silence in the presence of truth may be more powerful than any lie. The afternoon passed, more witnesses adding to the incriminating timeline. Financial experts took the stand to attest to Christine's devastated credit score, the late payments never made by her, the loans never touched. More testimony added each stone to the burden bearing down on Robyn. When the court finally recessed, Christine stepped into the hallway, her legs trembling. She leaned against the cool marble wall, trying to steady her breathing. Janelle appeared by her side, her voice fierce. You've got her. She can't wiggle out of this. Everyone saw it. Christine shook her head slowly. She'll find a way. She always does. And secretly she wasn't wrong. Robyn was delicate on the surface, but beneath she was fierce, volatile, and cornered creatures sometimes snapped in ways that no one anticipated. As Christine emerged outdoors, cameras went off, reporters shouted her name, questions danced like darts. She disregarded them, getting into the car that would drive her home. But as the door closed, and the commotion grew distant, a fresh fear crept over her. This wasn't finished, not by a long way. Robyn was hurt, desperate, and volatile. Christine stared out the window, at the fading light. Justice was finally within reach. But the shadows around her were deepening. Somewhere in those shadows, she sensed, lay a secret even darker than forged signatures and stolen credit. Something that could change everything again. Night fell thick around Christine's home. The silence ought to have been soothing, but it wasn't. She sat at her kitchen table, papers out before her like shards of a shattered mirror. Figures, account names, amounts owed, her existence dissected into hard copy. Each page appeared to yell betrayal. Her phone vibrated. It was Janelle. "I've been digging," the voice came rapid, frantic. "Christine? It's deeper than we thought. I uncovered other accounts, opened years prior, lines of credit, even property, linked to your name, all linked to Robyn's family." Christine's ribcage tightened. She held a hand to her forehead. "How far does it go?" "Not yet," Janelle whispered, as though whoever was on the other end of the phone could potentially eavesdrop. "But if this comes out in court, it's not fraud. It's jail time for her." Christine put down the receiver, her mind reeling. Jail? The term hung in the air, dense and absolute. One part of her felt justified, justice at last, but another part writhed with remorse. She had never desired prison for anyone, certainly not for someone who had sat in her family dining room. The following day, the courtroom was chock full of tension. Christine's attorney acted quickly, laying out the new evidence before the judge. Stacks of files showed patterns. Accounts Christine never made, loans she never asked for, property mired in her name. The deeper they dived, the more apparent the scheme became. Robyn whitened, breathing hard and stiff. She leaned in toward her lawyer, whispering wildly, but his face gave away his discomfort. The jury shifted, some with heads shaken in incredulity. The audience stirred in hushed tones, the theatrics spreading to every available corner of the room. Christine's attorney leaned forward gravely. "This is no innocent error. This is an intentional series of fraud, over the course of years. My client's name was used as a weapon against her, and it all seemed to trace back to one location: Robyn Brown's residence." Robyn's attorney leapt to his feet, his voice tense. "There are other suspects. Others who also had access to these devices, these accounts. It's irresponsible to lay blame without outright evidence of intent, but expert testimony was unmistakable. Metadata, recovery emails on the account, timestamps for logging in, they all led back to Robyn. Layer upon layer, the truth became more burdensome, more to be wished away." Christine sat quietly, her fingers tightly laced in her lap, calm on the outside, but turmoil inside. Relief entwined with grief, anger with fatigue. Seeing Robyn break was not how she imagined it would taste. It was like seeing a house burn, one she had once known as home. Justice doesn't always taste like victory. It tastes like loss. And then, just as suddenly, a fresh revelation sliced through the courtroom like a knife. The investigator produced one more account. An account that didn't merely harm Christine. This one had drained money from family accounts, intended for all the wives and kids. Gasps filled the air. Even Kody at last raised his head, his face a picture of shock. The implication was appalling. This wasn't Christine's credit, her life alone, it was the family's rock, shattered and hemorrhaging through clandestine routes. Robyn wept, her sobs great and unmanageable. "I didn't do this," she screamed, her voice hoarse. "I was trying to help. You don't understand. I was trying to save us." The judge's gavel crashed again, but the words hung in the air, sticking to every ear. "Trying to save us. Save who? Save what?" Christine glared at her, confusion intertwined with rage. Robyn wasn't just denying, she was distorting the story, reimagining her betrayal in some twisted shape of sacrifice. As the day ended, Christine emerged from the courthouse numb. Flashing cameras sidled questions, but her thoughts were elsewhere. The news of pilfered family money shook her more than anything thus far. This was no longer her fight alone. It was everyone's. That evening, she sat with Janelle once more, both of them tired, their faces etched with concern. Janelle's tone was firm but grim. If this gets out entirely, it won't just destroy Robyn. It'll destroy the family forever. Every kid, every marriage, every memory, it'll all be tainted. Christine gazed down at her hands, speaking almost in a whisper. It's already torn apart. The only difference now is the world is finally seeing it. And in that instant, Christine understood something cold. This trial was not merely about the theft of her name. It was about stripping away the tenuous illusion the Browns had constructed, the fissures they'd attempted so desperately to conceal. And once those fissures were exposed, there was no return. When the truth goes beyond one life and starts to untangle an entire family, the consequences become unstoppable. The air was heavier than ever before, thick with anticipation. Murmurs swirled through the gallery as the next witness took the stand. It wasn't another expert. It wasn't an investigator. It was Janelle. Christine's heart skipped. She had not known Janelle would take the stand. But now, as her sister-wife moved steadily to the witness stand, Christine experienced a rush of gratitude and fear. Janelle was always thoughtful, calculating. Her words mattered. The oath was administered, and Janelle folded her hands, her eyes tranquil but unyielding. Christine's attorney came first. Mrs. Brown, you've been a part of this family for decades. Can you tell the court what you observed about the financial concerns associated with Christine? Janelle's voice was calm. Christine was always responsible. She balanced statements, she planned, she didn't have debt. But as the years went by, I began to notice things. Bills in her name she didn't know about. Accounts that didn't make sense. And whenever anyone asked questions, somehow, they got redirected, usually to Robyn. Everyone turned to Robyn. She was sitting rigid, her cheeks smeared with tears, holding onto her rosary so hard her knuckles were white. Janelle went on, her tone growing sharp. There were times when Christine would be turned down for something little, a car loan, even a store card, and she'd come to me, baffled and frightened. I explained to her that it didn't compute. And now, seeing all this evidence, it makes sense. She wasn't irresponsible. She was targeted. The jury leaned forward, nodding slowly, the pieces falling into place in their minds. Robyn's attorney rose, trying to undercut the testimony. Mrs. Brown, isn't it true you've had disagreements with my client, that you've supported Christine in disputes against her? Janelle didn't flinch. We've had disagreements, yes. But this isn't about that. This is about Christine being hurt, and about someone in this family doing the hurting. Truth hits hardest when spoken by someone who never raises their voice. Christine swallowed hard at the lump in her throat, her eyes welling up. She longed to cross the room and grab Janelle's hand in encouragement. But all she could do was stand by and watch as her friend held steady against the burden of history. Then there was the surprise change of pace. The next witness wasn't an adult, but one of the kids. Christine's daughter Mykelti nervously approached the witness stand. The courtroom quieted. She was just a kid, but with her came an unvarnished sincerity the courtroom had never known. Her hands trembled as she swore the oath. Her voice shook, but she pushed the words through. You recall Mom crying at night. She didn't think we heard, but we did. She'd sit at the kitchen table, bills in front of her, head in her hands, and she'd say, I don't know how we'll get through this. The room fell quiet. Even the judge shifted, his stern face relaxing a little. Mykelti sniffled, holding on to the edges of the stand. It wasn't about money. It was about dignity, about being treated like she counted. And when we discovered it was because they'd signed papers in her name that she'd never even held, it shattered something within us. Christine chewed on her lip, struggling to remain calm. Her daughter's words cut through the hush, everyone laying bare the pain she had borne alone, for far too long. Robyn appeared broken, mascara streaked across her face, shoulders shaking. Christine couldn't, however, decide if it was guilt, fear, or just the shattering of her well-crafted persona. Robyn's attorney hesitated before cross-examining the young witness, realizing the risk. His questions were brief, cautious, but Mykelti's truth had already lodged itself deep into the hearts of the jury. When pain is spoken through the voice of a child, it can silence even the loudest defense. By the afternoon, the courtroom was as if it held its breath. Testimonies had heaped up like stones, each weightier than the previous one. Christine sat and witnessed the fabric of her family fall apart before her eyes. Loyalties torn, truths emerging, scars exposed. And yet, in the midst of it all, she observed Kody not moving. He hadn't said a word, hadn't testified, hadn't even provided Robyn with so much as a handkerchief. Stone-faced, he sat there like a statue, his eyes fixed on some point far away that only he could see. For Christine, that silence was nearly worse than Robyn's tears. His failure to speak, to acknowledge, to defend. Shame, complicity, something darker, something still yet to be revealed. As the sun set, Christine exited the courthouse with Janelle and her daughter by her side. The cameras were unforgiving, reporters yelling about family betrayal, children testifying against their own home. Christine maintained her forward gaze, her racing heart. She understood that this was no longer simply a court fight, this was a reckoning. A truth so strong it was shattering the very fabric of the family they once had pretended to be unbreakable. And buried deep within that truth, she felt, was one last secret, one that would shake not only the courtroom, but the very foundations of all the Browns had constructed. The courtroom was abuzz. As the next day commenced, reporters had already labeled the case, the trial destroying the Browns, and the gallery was packed fuller than ever before. Christine sat in silence, but her own nerves hummed with electricity. She had steeled herself for Robyn's tears, for her lawyer's jabs, but nothing could have prepared her for what came next. The judge cleared his throat. "We will now hear testimony from Mr. Kody Brown." The words hit Christine like a sledgehammer. She had waited for this, feared it, and now it was finally here. Kody got up slowly, jaw clenched, his golden hair combed back tightly, as if the vision of composure could mask the turmoil within. He swore without hesitation, then settled into the witness stand. The room grew smaller, all eyes on him. Christine's attorney began cautiously. "Mr. Brown, you've had the opportunity to be husband to both Christine and Robyn. You've witnessed how money was managed in this household. Can you tell the court something about Christine's handling of these accounts in question?" Kody fidgeted uncomfortably. "Christine, she never touched the accounts. She didn't like that stuff. I took care of most of it. Or Robyn did. Christine? She always wanted to avoid it." Christine's stomach curled. They were true, the words he spoke, but the tone, the how he did it, with such dismissal, he injured worse than lies. The lawyer prodded. So if Christine did steer clear of financial transactions, then why would her name be on these papers? Kody paused, his lips opened, shut again. A fleeting shadow of uncertainty crossed his eyes. I don't know." The silence lingered, heavy and accusatory. Christine leaned in, her breath caught. She knew him too well. That pause, that hesitation, meant there was something more. The lawyer did not release his grip. "Mr. Brown, records indicate that some of these accounts were connected not only to Robyn's email, but also to joint family funds. Funds you managed. Are you claiming to have no knowledge of this?" Kody bristled, his voice climbed to a crescendo. "I didn't sign anything. I didn't counterfeit anything. This wasn't me." The outburst sounded hollow, however, one that was defensive rather than definite. The jury resettled back, the look on their faces a blend of skepticism and discomfort. Denial sometimes screams louder than the truth it tries to hide. Robyn's lawyer intervened, attempting to ease the situation. "Mr. Brown, surely you can see, surely this is merely a case of misunderstanding over family accounts?" Kody massaged his temples, beads of perspiration on his forehead. We needed. Robyn told me she could sort it out. I let her? Perhaps I turned a blind eye when I should not have." Christine's heart racing, glanced away. The words cut her. He hadn't been quiet, he'd been complicit. His quiet had been permission. His lack of action had been approval. The lawyer leaned forward, one last time. "Mr. Brown, are you telling this court you knowingly looked the other way on fraudulent activity associated with your wife's activities?" The room was held in suspense. Kody's jaw tightened. His eyes darted to Robyn, who was shaking, her mascara running down her face. And slowly he began to say, "I didn't stop her. And maybe that makes me guilty too." Gasps had broken out throughout the gallery. Christine's body stiffened, her pulse pounded in her ears. There it was. The flaw in his armor, the concession she had long suspected but never believed he would utter. Robyn spun around to face him, her face contorted with sorrow. "You promised to protect me," she shouted, her voice cracking. "You promised to stand with me no matter what." Kody gazed at her then, his expression etched with something between regret and bitterness. "I stood with you, Robyn. But the truth isn't interested in vows." The judge's gavel came down, enforcing order, but the harm was already done. The jury had witnessed it, the disintegration of allegiance, the betrayal between husband and wife exposed under oath. When alliances break before the public eye, the shards cut everyone who stands nearby. Christine sat immobilized, her feelings colliding, vindication, sadness, even sympathy. This was not the victory she had fantasized about. Seeing them fall, witnessing the family shatter in public, it was both empty and necessary. As court recessed, Christine stood up slowly, her legs leaden. Robyn cried into her hands, her body trembling uncontrollably. As Kody sat frozen, his eyes fixed on nothing. For the first time, he seemed smaller, less, no longer the patriarch he had claimed, but a man shattered by decisions he could no longer justify. Outside, the world was a roar of questions, but Christine hardly heard them. Her own thoughts were consumed by Kody's words. "Maybe that makes me guilty too." The truth had come out, but she knew one thing: the reckoning hadn't yet come. The last word would not be Kody's, nor Robyn's. It would be hers. The last day of testimony came with the tension so sharp that it seemed possible the air might break. Christine entered the courthouse with her chin high, her steps firm, but a tempest brewing inside. This was it, the moment when her truth would be affirmed or discarded, when years of betrayal would finally be judged. The jury entered, their faces inscrutable, masks of neutrality, covering whatever it was that they had decided. The judge's gavel struck once, bringing order to the room. Christine clung to the edges of her table, anchoring herself. Her attorney stood for the closing statement. His words were slow, calculated, each one sewing the tale together. "This case has nothing to do with family squabbles or jealousy. This is a matter of fraud. It is about deceit done with skill. It is about a woman whose faith, whose sense of self, was taken from those who were closest to her. The proof is evident. The signatures are forged, the accounts are phony, and the trail points right back to Robyn Brown, and to the silence that made it possible." Christine's chest constricted, the tears pushing against the back of her eyes. She pushed them aside, not wanting to let the moment cause her to falter. The lawyer's tone bore the burden she'd carried for so long, and now it was being spoken at last. Robyn's lawyer trailed behind, prowling the floor like a man attempting to outdistance inevitability. Yes, errors were made. Yes, funds were mishandled. But fraud? Deliberate betrayal? That is not established beyond a reasonable doubt. My client is a wife, a mother, a woman who has sacrificed everything to this family. Do not let past and malice obscure your mind. Robyn crouched hunched, her body shaking, her eyes red and puffy. Kody sat next to her, empty and mute, a shadow of the man who used to rule a household. Christine's attorney rose again, his voice lowering, becoming nearly a whisper. "Ladies and gentlemen, the truth has already spoken. You only need to decide if you are willing to hear it. Sometimes truth doesn't roar. It waits for us to be brave enough to see it." The jury vanished into deliberation, and the courtroom settled into an agitated stillness. Minutes congealed into hours, each tick of the clock a blow against Christine's ribs. She sat motionless, her hands folded, her breathing shallow. Janelle tightened her grip on her arm. Mykelti rested her head against her mother's shoulder. They waited together. As the jury finally came back, the room came back to life. The foreman stood up, paper clutched in hand, his tone firm. "On the charge of fraud, we find the defendant, Robyn Brown, guilty." The words hung, heavy and final. Christine's body collapsed. the breath she hadn't even known she was holding finally letting go. Relief washed over her, but so did sorrow. She had won, but the win was bitter. Robyn wailed, falling against the table. Kody's hand flinched as if to comfort her, but he hesitated, holding still in his chair. His silence was deafening. The judge slammed the gavel. Sentencing would follow. For now the case was closed. Christine slowly got up, her legs shaking. Outside, reporters would ask for her response. But for a second, she stood, looking at the room that had contained her agony, her struggle, her reality. The space where her family's image had shattered against the harshness of reality. As she emerged from the courtroom, flashes burst, microphones were thrust forward, questions showered over her. Christine raised her chin and spoke, her voice firm and unwavering. I didn't battle for revenge. I battled for my name, for my children, for the truth. And the truth won. Her words resonated beyond the courthouse, into living rooms, into discussions, into the hearts of all who had witnessed every turn and every twist. And as she walked away from the cameras, moving into the uncertain illumination of the future, she bore not only justice, but liberty. Did justice at last bring peace to Christine? Or did this trial open only more wounds that would never really heal? Let us know in the comments below. And if you've been with us on this journey, don't forget to sign up for TLC Future. Your voice in the comments brings these stories to life.